You step into the glittering ballroom, convinced this night will finally be yours the moment your family recognizes the years of sacrifice and hard work that brought you here. But when the name tag is pinned to your chest, the words limited guest stare back like a blade. In an instant, laughter ripples through the room, mocking eyes follow you, and you realize this dinner was never meant to honor you, but to diminish you in front of everyone. Hope turns into harsh truth, and in that very moment, a story of reclaiming dignity begins. If this strikes a chord with you, gently tap like and subscribe to stay close to the next family revenge story. The sting of that name tag lingers in your chest, but to understand why it hurts so deeply, you have to trace the road that brought you here. You grew up in Phoenix, where the desert sun painted the horizon in hues of fire each evening, and where family values were supposed to mean sacrifice and loyalty. From childhood, you were told that family came first, that every success, every resource, every ounce of energy you earned should circle back to the people closest to you. And so, you carried that mantra into adulthood, even when the weight grew unbearable. While your peers built lives free of obligation, you became the pillar. Your brother Derek, the dreamer with more schemes than plans, leaned on you constantly. When he lost his job again, his voice trembled over the phone. "Just a little help, just until I'm back on my feet." You wired $3,000, enough to cover his rent in temp. He promised gratitude, whispered vows to repay you. But gratitude never arrived. Then came your mother Carol. When her knee surgery left her with bills she claimed insurance wouldn't cover, she looked at you with a smile too practiced. "You're doing so well, sweetheart. Just a small favor." You clear the debt with $5,000, swallowing the unease that her recovery trip seemed more like a vacation at a luxury spa. And your father, James, bolder than the rest, cloaked his demands in charm. "It's just a business venture, an opportunity we can't miss." Or, "Car trouble, nothing major, just need a quick fix." His calls came like clockwork, $8,000 here, $10,000 there, each one painting itself as urgent, necessary, temporary. You set up a company account just to streamline the flow, believing organization would bring boundaries. Instead, it became their personal wallet. Over 3 years, $50,000 drained away. Your accountant flapped the numbers, warning you they're treating you like an ATM. But you pushed the warnings aside, holding on to hope that this pattern of taking would eventually soften into gratitude. That one day, they'd look at you with pride instead of entitlement. You threw yourself into your work to drown out the doubts. The marketing agency you built from scratch became your lifeline, each late night at the office, a reminder of who you were outside their shadow. Winning clients, securing promotions, building a reputation in Phoenix's business world, those victories belonged to you. Yet at every milestone, silence echoed from the very people you longed to hear from. When you were promoted to director, your phone remained cold, your inbox empty. No congratulatory text from Derek, no call from your parents. The only acknowledgement was a generic card from your grandmother, Helen, whose shaky handwriting carried more obligation than warmth. Your friend Monica saw the truth long before you admitted it. "They don't value you," close quote, she said over coffee, her voice steady. "They value what you give them. That's not the same." Her words cut deep because they echoed what you already knew but couldn't face. Still, when your father called days later, his voice unusually warm, you felt a flicker of hope. "Come early," close quote, he said. "We'll celebrate you." That hope carried you through the week. You imagined the resort ballroom filled with laughter for the right reasons this time, imagined glasses raised in your honor, imagined for once being seen not as a provider, but as a daughter worth celebrating. You brushed aside the doubts, ignored the recent withdrawals from the company account that lacked receipts, convinced yourself that this dinner was different. But the truth revealed itself cruelly. The name tag, the laughter, the smirk from Derek, the pointed glance from your mother, all reminders that their invitation was not a gesture of love, but another stage for humiliation. You didn't shout. You didn't cry. You sat there, hands trembling but steady enough to unlock your phone. Your expression blank, you typed the words that would sever years of exploitation. "Cancel access immediately." But first, no one noticed. Waiters moved between tables, trays glinting under the chandelier. Your father shook hands, Derek sipped his drink, your mother laughed too loudly. But when their phones buzzed one after another, the glow on their screens washed the color from their faces. The account was gone. Their open wallet had been shut. And in that moment, for the first time, you felt control shift back to where it belonged. It wasn't just about money, it was about reclaiming dignity. You leaned back, heart racing, but your face calm. For once, you weren't the one squirming under their judgment. They were. That night didn't just mark the collapse of their expectations. It marked the beginning of your revenge story. Because family may take your money, your time, your energy, but when they cross the line of respect, you can take back your power. If you've ever carried others until your back ached and longed for a moment to stand tall on your own, let this story remind you. Your worth is not measured by what others take. If you feel that truth resonate, a gentle like and subscribe will help keep these family revenge stories reaching those who need to hear them most. The ballroom still shimmered with golden light, but for you, everything had dimmed. The clink of glasses and the hum of conversation blurred into background noise as your family stared at their glowing phones. Their eyes darted between screens and your calm face, as though trying to reconcile what had just happened. For the first time, it was not you left scrambling to explain yourself. It was them. Your father, always quick with a speech, was suddenly silent. His jaw clenched, his knuckles white around the stem of his wine glass. Your mother leaned closer to Derek, whispering furiously, her hand gripping his arm so tightly he winced. Derek, pale and jittery, tapped at his phone, refreshing the screen as though the balance might magically return. The silence that had settled at your table was louder than the music swelling through the room. Guests nearby glanced at the frozen tableau, curiosity flickering in their eyes. But you remained composed, breathing evenly, refusing to grant them the spectacle of your anger. At last, your father broke. "What have you done?" Close quote. His voice was low, a growl meant only for you, but sharp enough to cut through the noise. You met his gaze. "I closed the account." "My account?" "The one you've been draining for years." His face flushed crimson, but it wasn't shame. It was fury at being exposed. "Do you realize how much we've counted on you?" Close quote. Your mother hissed, her voice trembling with outrage. "How could you do this in front of everyone?" Close quote. Her words twisted the knife further. Not how could you take away what wasn't theirs, but how could you embarrass us? For years, you had been the silent provider, absorbing the humiliation of their demands. Now, the roles had reversed, and they couldn't bear it. Derek slammed his phone onto the table. "I had investments. You've ruined everything." Close quote. You almost laughed, though nothing about the moment was funny. Investments. That was his word for gambling money away on reckless schemes. You had enabled it for too long. Now the stream had dried, and he looked less like a man betrayed than a child deprived of candy. The rest of the evening was a blur of accusations whispered under the music, of your father demanding explanations, your mother pressing her hands to her temples in manufactured despair, Derek muttering curses he thought no one heard. But you sat still, hands folded in your lap, letting the words wash over you without response. When dessert was served, you rose quietly. The silk of your dress caught the light as you stepped away from the table, your movements calm and deliberate. Eyes followed you, some curious, some sympathetic, but you didn't falter. For the first time, you were not fleeing. You were choosing to walk away. That night, when you returned home, your phone buzzed endlessly. Calls from your father, texts from your mother, angry voicemails from Derek, all demanding answers, some pleading, others dripping with venom. You let them pile up, unread. The silence on your end spoke louder than any reply. But silence is rarely accepted by those who thrive on control. Within days, the confrontation escalated. They appeared at your doorstep, your father pounding on the door as your mother's voice cracked through the night air. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains as your family turned your quiet street into a stage. "You can't just cut us off." Close quote. Your father shouted. "We're family. Everything you have came from us." The claim stung not because it was true, but because of how confidently he believed it. Every penny you had earned, every late night at the office, every sacrifice you made, it was yours alone. And yet, in his narrative, your success was theirs by default. Your mother's tears flowed easily, her words crafted to wound. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. Do you even care about your own family?" Close quote. Derek, less patient, shoved his way past them, trying to force himself inside. You blocked him, your hand firm against the doorframe. His breath reeked of alcohol, his eyes bloodshot with desperation. "You owe me," close quote, he spat. "You owe all of us." But you no longer believed that lie. James, the one steady presence who had watched this unfold with growing unease, finally stepped forward. He raised his voice, surprising everyone, especially himself. "Enough. You've taken advantage of her long enough. This ends now." The declaration shifted something in the air. For years, James had been quiet, trying to keep peace, but his words carried weight because they revealed what you had always known. You were not alone anymore. Your family's outrage didn't fade. If anything, it grew sharper. They spread whispers among extended relatives, painting you as selfish, cold, heartless. They posted cryptic remarks online, hoping to shame you publicly. But the more they tried to tarnish your name, the clearer the truth became to those who mattered. Friends rallied around you, colleagues praised your courage, even acquaintances who had seen glimpses of your family's entitlement nodded with quiet understanding. At work, you moved with new energy, freed from the constant drain of hidden withdrawals and last-minute demands. For the first time, your paycheck belonged entirely to you. The freedom was intoxicating. You bore fresh flowers for your office, small symbols of joy that reminded you life could be beautiful when you weren't carrying the weight of office debts. But at night, the ache lingered. Betrayal doesn't vanish overnight. You lay awake replaying their words, feeling the sting of their accusations. Family was supposed to mean loyalty, love, protection. Instead, yours had turned it into a transaction, a series of withdrawals measured in dollars and guilt. And yet, even in the pain, there was a strange kind of peace. You had drawn a line, one that could not be erased. The dinner, once meant to humiliate you, had instead liberated you. You hadn't planned it that way, but life has a way of forcing the truth into the light. Looking back, you realize that moment in the ball, cousins you had not spoken to in years suddenly sent you messages dripping with judgment. How could you abandon your parents? Close quote, one wrote. An aunt posted a vague rant online about children who forget where they come from. Even your grandmother, who had always been neutral, looked at you with eyes clouded by someone else's version of events. It was clear. Your parents had woven a narrative where you were selfish, cruel, ungrateful. The sting of betrayal pierced deeper because it wasn't just about money anymore. It was about identity. They were rewriting who you were in the eyes of the people who mattered most. Yet even as their campaign against you grew, you began to notice cracks. Some relatives reached out privately, confessing that they didn't believe the stories. They had seen the pattern of demands before, watched as your parents and Derek leaned on you too often. I'm not surprised, close quote, one cousin admitted quietly. You just finally said no. Still, the hostility in your own home city was suffocating. At work you held your head high, delivering presentations, leading your team with confidence. But in the quiet moments, doubt gnawed at you. Were you cruel? Had you gone too far? Was cutting them off the right choice? James reminded you of the truth each night. You've carried them long enough, close quote, he said, his voice steady. This isn't cruelty. This is survival. His support became your anchor, but even he could not shield you from the escalation that was coming. The breaking point arrived on a humid Thursday evening. You returned from work to find Derek waiting on your doorstep, his posture restless, his eyes burning with desperation. You ruined me, close quote, he spat the moment you approached. Do you even realize what you've done? Close quote, you kept your voice calm. I ended what should never have started. That money wasn't yours, Derek. It was mine. He laughed bitterly, though the sound carried no trace of humor. His shoulders shook with mockery, his eyes glinting in the dim porch light, as if he were relishing his own cruelty. You think you are better than us because you made it out. Close quote, he spat. Because you have some fancy title and an office downtown. You forget who helped you when you were starting out. The accusation landed with a heavy thud, like a stone thrown directly at the fragile glass of memory. But you didn't flinch. You had prepared yourself for this moment long before it arrived. Because deep down, you remembered everything. You remembered those early years, when money was thin and rent overdue. How your parents offered their couch for a few months until you scraped enough to move out. You remembered Derek loaning you his car for a week when yours broke down, though even then he never let you forget the favor. At the time, those gestures had felt like lifelines. But in the years that followed, those lifelines were repaid 100 times over, swallowed beneath the tens of thousands you had poured into their needs. Every cent you sent, every emergency you covered, every debt you absorbed, it had erased whatever balance remained. And still, they acted as though the ledger was tilted in their favor. You've been paid back, close quote, you said firmly, your voice slicing through the night air. More than paid back. For a second, silence. Then Derek's face twisted with fury, his mouth curled in a sneer. You regret this, close quote, he hissed, his voice low and venomous. And with that, he stormed off into the darkness, his threat lingering in the air long after his footsteps faded. You stood in the doorway, heart pounding but steady, knowing the storm was far from over. The next morning, you discovered what he meant. Online, a flurry of posts appeared as if conjured overnight. Accusations exploded across platforms. Claims that you were a fraud, a thief, even that you had exploited your own parents for personal gain. Anonymous accounts multiplied quickly, each one repeating the lies with slight variations. But the style was unmistakable, sloppy grammar, melodramatic flair, phrases you'd heard Derek use countless times in arguments. At first, the humiliation cut deep. You felt the ground shift beneath your feet as colleagues approached cautiously, asking careful questions. Friends called with concern, their voices tinged with doubt. Even those who trusted you most hesitated, their silence loud enough to pierce. In the office, whispers floated behind you like shadows. Emails arrived with polite but pointed inquiries. Is everything all right at home? Close quote, do you need to take a leave of absence? Close quote, you answered calmly, but inside, the shame burned hot, a brand pressed against your skin. But then, clarity came. You remembered something crucial. You had kept records. Every transfer, every receipt, every message where your family begged for just one more favor, you had saved them all, though at the time you hadn't understood why. Perhaps some part of you had always known this day would come. Now, those records became your shield. With James' encouragement, you gathered everything into a thick folder. One evening, under the sterile glow of an office lamp, you sat across from your lawyer and placed the folder on his polished desk. He flipped through the pages slowly, his brows furrowing deeper with each turn. The silence stretched until finally he looked up, his expression stern. "This close quote," he said, tapping the papers with his pen, "is more than enough. If they continue, we'll act. You have proof not just of the money, but of the manipulation." For the first time in weeks, you exhaled fully, your lungs releasing the weight of fear. The storm outside was still raging, but you finally had armor. Yet your parents did not stop. They arrived again one weekend, this time dragging your grandmother with them. Her frail figure trembled in the spring breeze, her hands clutching her cane as she stepped onto your porch. Her presence was meant to soften you, to strike guilt into the cracks of your resolve. She spoke first, her voice quavering. "They're your family. Can't you forgive them?" Close quote. The sight tore at you. This woman had rocked you to sleep as a child, had baked pies for every holiday, had whispered prayers over you when you were sick. To see her here, enlisted as another pawn in the war, twisted something inside you. But the memory of that ballroom burned brighter than guilt, the sign pinned to your chest reading "Limited Guest," close quote, the laughter that rippled like knives, Derek's smirk as you sat humiliated. You shook your head gently, forcing calm into your voice. "Forgiveness is not the same as surrender. I can love you, Grandma, but I cannot let them destroy me." Her eyes glistened with tears, her lips parting as though to protest. Yet deep down, you saw it, the flicker of understanding. She had lived long enough to know the weight of manipulation, to recognize patterns even when love blinded the truth. It was your father who cracked next. His patience shattered like glass under pressure, and his voice boomed across the porch, echoing the same authority he had wielded over you as a child. "We built you. Everything you are is because of us." Close quote. The words reverberated through the air, heavy with entitlement. But this time, you didn't shrink. You didn't let them sink in as truth. Because the truth was undeniable now. You had built yourself. Brick by brick. Late night by late night. Through sweat and sacrifice, through rejection and perseverance, you had carved your path. Their words no longer held power. They revealed only their refusal to see you clearly. Your mother's tears followed, sliding down her cheeks like a performance rehearsed too many times. Once, those tears had been your undoing. Once, they had bent your will, cracked your defenses, drawn your wallet open even when you couldn't afford it. But now, they slid off you like rain against stone. That night, after they left, you sat in the quiet of your home. The silence was heavy, yet strangely peaceful. The war had not ended, but something inside you had shifted irrevocably. You no longer feared their anger. You no longer bent beneath their accusations. You had faced the storm and remained standing. In that resilience, you began to see the shape of a new future. A future where you would not be their scapegoat, their provider, their victim. A future where your worth was not measured by what you gave away, but by the boundaries you held. And that realization was more powerful than any revenge could be. Because the revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't the dramatic showdown you once imagined. It wasn't slamming doors or shouting matches or triumphant speeches. It was quieter, sharper, more enduring. It was the act of refusing to be broken. It was turning their weapons of shame into proof of their own actions. It was survival, sharpened into strength. In the days that followed, you fortified your defenses further. You updated security, changed locks, installed cameras. You spoke with HR at your firm, sharing enough of the truth that their doubts dissolved. The online lies withered under the weight of your silence and the strength of your reputation. Colleagues who had once questioned you now rallied, praising your professionalism in the face of chaos. Friends who had hesitated came back with apologies, admitting they had been swept up by the noise. And slowly, the whispers faded. But your family's shadow still lingered. Each creak of the floorboards at night made you wonder if Derek might return with another stunt. Each unfamiliar car idling near your street sent a jolt of suspicion through your chest. Yet even in those moments, you felt stronger. Because fear no longer dictated your choices, resolved it. You knew the final confrontation still loomed ahead. One last reckoning, one final act to close the chapter fully. But as you sat one evening with James, the city lights glowing faintly through the window, you felt a calm you hadn't known in years. He reached for your hand, his grip warm and steady. "You've already won," close quote, he said softly. "Not because you defeated them, but because you didn't let them defeat you." And in that moment, you understood. The days of being their limited guest were truly over. The final confrontation may not have ended with tears of reconciliation, but it gave you something far more valuable: closure. For years, you had been the silent provider, the easy target for guilt, the one who always said yes. Now, as you stood in the quiet of your own home, you realized that saying no had not made you cruel, it had made you free. Your parents and brother might never understand the cost of their choices. They might continue to spin stories, to cloak entitlement as love. But their power over you had broken the moment you chose dignity over silence.